of prisms, they all have one thing in common, and that's how you define a prism. So a prism is defined as a solid that has two bases that are congruent, and that's the important part, that are congruent and parallel. And so the very first thing we're going to start with is, how do you name a prism? And the way you name them is depending on their base, that's what you're going to call it. For example, if the base of the prism is a rectangle, then it's a rectangular prism. If the base of a prism is a triangle, then it's going to be a triangular prism, such and such. And so if we look at the very first one, we have the base here, which is a rectangle, and the other base that's opposite, congruent and parallel to it, is also a rectangle. And so here we have what we call a rectangular prism. And same for the next figure. So the next prism, the base shape is a triangle, and we know that it's the base because it's only two of a kind. For example, it's not the rectangle. It's not, here, let me see if I can, it's not this part right here, because if you notice, there's three of them, not just two. And so here, because the base is indeed a triangle, then this is what we call a triangular prism. And same with this last prism down here, the base is a trapezoid, and so the name for this prism is a trapezoidal prism. So now let's talk about, we have different parts of a prism. So we have what we call lateral area, and then we have something that we call total surface area. And so let's start with lateral area. So lateral area, if you think back to nets, lateral area is kind of like everything except the base. So for example, if I define in this rectangular prism, okay, if I define this to be my base, right? So here's one base, here's the second base. Then what's going to be considered the lateral is everything else. So we have this top rectangle up here. We have this side one down here. Then we have this one in the back, and this bottom one down here. And so that's what we call my lateral area. And so for my lateral area, yes, we can find the area of this side here, the back one, the top one, and the bottom one, add them together. Or if you think about it, if I can kind of extend all of this, if I can kind of extend, in other words, if I can kind of make the net for this, the net might look something like this, where this is one of the base. Okay, so we'll say that's the base. And then we have the bottom, which is down here at the bottom. And then I'm going to draw this other base right there. So that's kind of like the whole bottom part. And so the next thing I'm going to draw is draw the two sides. So here's one of the sides, here's the other side. I'm going to erase this part. So these are the two sides, and then we got the top. So which is, so let's just call it this. And so I know it's kind of sloppy, but there's a point to this, I promise. If you notice, once I kind of lay it out, I have a big rectangle here. And so, yeah, so what I was saying is, yes, we can find the area of this, each one individually, add them together, and that's going to give me my lateral area. But the fastest way, or the quickest way to find lateral area is to find the perimeter, okay, of one of the bases, and multiply that times the height of the prism. And the reason we're going to do that is because if you can see, so if I were to fold my net, or if I were to fold this figure, this side would match up here, this would match with the top, and this would be here. And so that, and then the bottom one obviously is just the bottom one. And so that kind of outlines the perimeter of the base, so that's why we got to find the perimeter. And once we have the perimeter, the only thing that's left to do is multiply it times the height of the prism, which is the height is going to be of the prism is going to be defined as the distance from one base to the next. And so to find lateral area, and we're going to use LA for it. So lateral area is just going to be the perimeter of the prism times height of the prism. So here I'll put P is the perimeter of the base, and we said H was going to be height of the prism. And so this formula here is, no matter what the shape is, it's always going to give me my lateral area. Okay, so and then one thing that's good about this is perimeter for any area or any shape, you always just add up all the sides. So if it was a triangle, you add up all the sides. If it was a parallelogram, add up all the sides. If it was a trapezoid, add up all the sides. Hexagon, any regular polygon, you just add up all the sides. And then the height of the prism is just the distance from one base to the other base. Okay. And so now let's talk about total surface area, which we're going to define as SA. So total surface area, well, one is going to include my lateral area, so put LA, plus, so if I'm looking for the total surface area, that means I'm looking for all the areas, which includes the lateral area and the area of the bases. And so here, the lateral area gives me everything around except the bases. And so really the only thing that's missing from my total surface area is the area of the two bases. And so because we know the bases are congruent and parallel, then really all I have to do is find the area of one of the bases and multiply by 2 because I have two bases. And so down here, LA, we already said it's perimeter times height. And B is going to represent the area. So I'll write it down. B is equal to area of the base. If you stick with me, we're going to do some problems in a bit. And so I'm going to rewrite this equation one more time with everything we know. So LA, or lateral area, we said was perimeter of the base times height of the prism plus 2 times area of the base. Okay, so these are the two formulas that's going to be important for us once we start doing some of these problems. So we got this, which is my surface area, or you can label it as this, doesn't matter, you get the same thing. And so we have our two equations. Talk about the actual formulas for a rectangular prism, triangular prism, and trapezoidal prism, and then we'll do some examples. So starting off with the rectangular prism, we have the base being a rectangle. And so I have my lateral area, which is just perimeter times h, where h is going to be height of the prism, which is going to be the distance from one base to the other base. And then we have my total surface area, which is my lateral area plus area of the two bases. So now, because the area of a base, or which is an area of a rectangle, is just base times height, we have to be a little bit careful with our wording. So here, my lateral area was perimeter times height. My area of the base is length times width, or base times height, however you want to say. But we have to be careful because this B represents area of the base. For a triangular prism, we have the base as a triangle, and so that's going to change how we write the formula for surface area. For lateral area, it's just perimeter times height. Now, here's one disclaimer. Remember, height is not the height of the base. It's the height from one base to the other base. Now, when we're finding perimeter, sometimes you're going to be given the height of the base or the height of the triangle, and we're going to have to use Pythagorean theorem to find some of these sites, and we'll do some of those problems at a later video. For right now, my total surface area would be lateral area plus 2 times the base. And so if we write it one more time, we have perimeter times height plus 2 times area of the base. Now, because the area of the base is a triangle, the formula that I would use to find the area of a triangle is 1/2 little b for base times h for height. Now, here's where we have to be careful because, once again, that little b represents base of triangle, or kind of like the base of the base, so this base down here. And this little h here represents height of triangle. So this height right here, and it does not represent the height of the prism, it represents the height of the base. And so that's why we say we got to be a little bit careful, okay? So these two h's, these two heights are different. I'll put different. Which brings us to our last trapezoidal prism. So once again, we have our base is a trapezoid. And so remember, key parts of a trapezoid is one, the height, which is the height of the base, which is from one base to the other base, and we have two bases, base 1, base 2. So this one gets even a little bit more confusing, but the formula is still the same thing. So lateral area perimeter times height. Surface area is lateral area plus 2 times area of the base, where we said lateral area is just perimeter times height. Once again, that height is the height of the prism, so from one base to the other base, plus 2 times area of the base. Now, because the base is a trapezoid, remember, area of a trapezoid is base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2 times height. And once again, that height is the height of the base, not the height of the prism. So let's actually go ahead and attempt our first problem here. So for the first problem, it says find two things. Find one, the lateral area, and two, find the total surface area of the triangle below. So the first thing is identify the base. So my base here is this rectangle, and because I know it's parallel and congruent to the other base, I have the dimensions that I need. So I'm going to write them all here. So I know that's 3, this height is 4, and or length and width, and then the height of my prism is 10. And so the first thing I'm going to do is find my lateral area. And so remember, lateral area was just perimeter of the base times height of the prism. So here I already know my height of my prism is 10. So height of the prism, I'm going to call it little h here, is 10. So really what I have to figure out is, what is perimeter? So perimeter is going to add the two sides, which is 4 and 4, and then this 3 and that 3, and so I have plus 3 and 3. And so to find the perimeter is 14. And so my lateral area is just perimeter, which we said was 14, times, and I'm going to put a little dot to represent multiplication, times 10, gives me a lateral area of 140 inches squared. And so now we're going to look for the total surface area. So the total surface area, we already know that is going to be the lateral area plus 2 times area of the base. So we just found lateral area. So I'm going to kind of give that a check because I already know that. So the only thing I got to figure out, the only thing I got to worry about is, what is big B? And remember, that's just area of the base. Where here my base is a rectangle, and to find area of a rectangle is just base times height. And so big B is just 3 times 4. Now, I'm going to put all these numbers together, but really, I have everything that I need. I can technically go in and replace every one of these and be done with it. So my surface area, we said was lateral area, which we found to be 140, plus 2 times area of the base, which we just found to be 12. And really all that's left to do now is simplify. So 2 times 12 is 24. 140 plus 24 gives me a total surface area of 164 inches squared. Alright, so let's move on to the next problem. So for the next problem, we have a triangular prism. And I know it's a triangular prism because the bases are both triangles. And so here we're going to do the same thing. We're going to find lateral area and total surface area. So for lateral area, I'm going to write it down here. We have perimeter times height. So the first thing is I need to figure out the height of the prism, which they're given to me. And I know that's the height of the prism because it goes from one base to the other base. So here, my height is 12. The next thing I gotta find is find the perimeter of my base. So here's the base, which is a triangle, and I gotta find the perimeter of that. So I know the lengths of the sides are 7, 4, and 7. And I know it's 7 because of the 7 up there. And so to find the perimeter, I just add up all the sides. So 7 plus 4 gives me a perimeter of 18. And so to find my lateral area, I simply multiply 12 times 18, and that's going to give me an area of 216 centimeters squared. And so if we move on to my total surface area, remember surface area is just lateral area plus 2 times area of the base. Lateral area we just found, okay, so I'm checking that off, I'm leaving it off, that's an L, sorry. And so the only thing I gotta figure out is what is B. And so B, we gotta look, what is the area of the base? Now, because the base is a triangle, I need the height of that triangle. And so it gives me the height of the triangle. The height of the triangle is 6. And the little b that I'm going to have to use for the base of that triangle is 4. And so the area I calculate by doing 1/2 the base, which is 4, times the height, which is 6. And so we multiply that, and that's going to give me the area of the base. So half of 4 is 2, and 2, well, I'll write it down, and 2 times 6 is 12. And so the area of the base is 12, and so really all I got to do is plug everything back in or substitute everything back in. So my lateral area was 216. The area of one of the bases was 12, and so I multiply 2 times 12, which is 24, add it to 216, and I get a total surface area of 240 centimeters squared.